Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're taking a fascinating and frankly a completely chilling deep dive into a concept we pretty much all take for granted, right? Our sense of security. We love to believe that when we lock our doors at night, we're entirely cut off from the chaos of the outside world, safe and sound. But the really unsettling reality we're exploring today is that our most vulnerable moments actually occur precisely where we expect to be the safest. Yeah, our sanctuaries aren't always as impenetrable as we think.
So, how safe do you really feel behind locked doors? Today we're going to analyze 3 true, completely unconnected accounts that all source from real experiences of shattered safe spaces. Now, as we unpack these events, I really want you to pay attention to this one single, terrifying thread tying them all together: the chilling, absolutely expressionless faces of the perpetrators. We're not talking about your typical break-ins here. These are highly calculated invasions of privacy delivered with zero emotion.
Chapter 1. The House Next Door. Let's get right into it. Okay, so picture this stark contrast. On one side, you've got a 20-year-old couple just starting their life together. They rescued a cat, they're totally thrilled with their brand new dream home. It's perfect. But right next door, an abandoned, half-renovated property. And because of those unfinished renovations, there was literally no fence separating the 2 backyards. Well, this lack of a physical boundary essentially gave unlimited, entirely unwanted access to a group of trespassing men who just started cutting right through the property. And the very first sign of trouble? A man standing in a dark, unlit room of that abandoned house next door, staring down at the couple with a completely blank, expressionless face for half an hour.
This is such a brilliant illustration of how intimidation doesn't always kick off with some massive Hollywood-style threat, you know? It starts with bizarre, almost mundane boundary testing. These men didn't just stop at staring. They eventually walked right into the couple's garden, completely uninvited. They acted as if they owned the place. At one point, one of the men even walked up to the couple carrying a large bag and, bizarrely, offered them stolen washing up tablets. When they declined, the men left, but the underlying message was loud and clear: your space is not yours. The police did eventually remove these guys for antisocial behavior, but man, the quiet that followed did not last long. At exactly 2:16 a.m., the tension completely shatters. The couple is lying in bed, trying to sleep, and suddenly they hear whistling. And not just a cheerful tune, but that specific, predatory kind of whistle used to harass women. Just chilling. Then comes the terrifying sound of someone physically tapping on their bedroom window. The couple absolutely panicked. They rushed to check their security cameras, but incredibly, the cameras hadn't recorded a single thing. Nothing.
Now here's the crucial twist they discovered the next morning. That Ring doorbell? It hadn't just glitched or malfunctioned, it had been totally tampered with. It was literally ripped off and lying on the floor, and the SD card was completely gone. This represents a massive shift in the story. The threat just evolved from a group of annoying trespassers to a highly calculated, targeted stalking operation. Whoever was out there wanted them to know for sure that they were being watched, and that their little countermeasures were totally useless.
A few weeks later, this harassment reaches a terrifying peak. The couple checks their live camera feed, right? And they find a masked man standing outside in the dark. He had his hood up, staring directly up at their bedroom window. But get this, he had his arms spread wide like Jesus on the cross. He just stood there, completely motionless, for 30 minutes. And if that wasn't horrifying enough, he actually came back at 2:52 in the morning, this time with an accomplice, shining flashlights into the windows and holding a crowbar. They never actually broke in. They just stood there, staring blankly, seemingly feeding entirely on the couple's fear.
Chapter 2. Psychological Graffiti. We're moving from a physical territorial invasion to an inescapable psychological one.
Psychological graffiti. Now this is a brilliant, if utterly terrifying term, used by the source material to describe the torment inflicted by a highly controlling ex-boyfriend named Caleb. You see, Caleb wasn't physically violent, but he was incredibly possessive and calculating. So after the narrator broke up with him, changed her phone number, and completely moved apartments, she thought she was finally safe. But Caleb? He found a way to spray his presence onto complete strangers to ensure she would literally never feel secure again. Here's how it played out. Our narrator walks into this random hole-in-the-wall coffee shop right near her new apartment. The barista, a totally expressionless girl about her age, tilts her head and says, "Good morning, Sunshine." Now I know what you're thinking. Friendly greeting, right? No. Sunshine was Caleb's exact, highly specific, sarcastic nickname for her whenever they argued. Coming from a total stranger's mouth, it was utterly paralyzing. And it definitely did not stop there. A few days later, she's in a rideshare, and the 50-year-old driver looks at her in the rearview mirror and repeats another one of Caleb's highly specific lines, completely verbatim. Ever figure out what you're running from? I mean, what are the odds? Soon, strangers in the grocery store were whispering things to her. Some guy in her building was humming the exact same tune Caleb used to play during their arguments. All of these strangers had completely different faces, but their eyes, they all carried the same blank, knowing expression. It created this inescapable, suffocating paranoia. This terror followed her right to her doorstep. She was living alone on the top floor of her apartment building, and she woke up one morning to find her doormat flipped completely over. Scribbled in pen on the underside was this incredibly menacing message: "You can change your face too if you want, but I'll still recognize you." Driven to the absolute brink by this, she fled her supposedly secure apartment to go hide out in a hotel, just desperate to find some anonymity among crowds.
The actual mechanics behind this stalking are what makes it so terrifying. The narrator eventually discovered that Caleb was actually in a rehab facility for 6 weeks with absolutely zero phone access. He physically couldn't be doing this himself. Then she remembered him talking about this cult-like productivity and roleplay forum online. Caleb had literally hired an underground network of absolute strangers to mimic his phrases and behavior patterns. Even at her secret hotel, at 2 a.m., she hears 3 slow knocks on her door. She looks through the peephole, and there's a blank-faced 40-year-old woman just staring at the door. Caleb had successfully completely destroyed her ability to ever trust a stranger's face again.
Chapter 3: The Midnight Jester.
For our final story, we transition from the city to a remote vacation rental in Michigan, where an 18-person family trip transforms into an isolated nightmare. 4 of the cousins were assigned to sleep out in a neglected, detached garage behind the main Airbnb. Well, the linens were pretty gross, so one cousin actually spent hours going up and down the stairs completely alone, washing all the sheets. By 2:37 a.m., the clean-smelling sheets were finally on the beds, and they tried to get some sleep. But at exactly 3 a.m., a deafening crash hits the heavy garage door. I mean, literally shaking the whole building. Then another crash, and a third. It was way too forceful to possibly be the wind. It actually wasn't until 4:11 a.m. that their aunt, who was inside the main house, finally texted them back, which prompted the uncle to go outside and investigate. So the uncle, who by all accounts is a highly serious and logical man, finally goes outside to see what's happening, and he sees a man standing right behind the garage. Now the guy isn't hiding, he's just standing there, staring, almost like he wanted to be seen. When the uncle shouts at him, the man doesn't even flinch, zero emotion. He simply turns and seemingly vanishes right into thin air. I'm serious, he didn't crunch any leaves, he left absolutely zero footprints in the dirt. It defied all logic. But as the family evacuated the garage to go squeeze into the safety of the main house, the brothers found something deeply, deeply unsettling. 2 jester cards had been left behind on the property, and one of them was this visibly twisted, demonic-looking card. This is really the eerie punchline of the whole story. Jester cards symbolize mockery, right? And if you remember the timeline, those deafening crashes started precisely at 3 a.m., which is widely known in folklore as the Devil's Hour. The perpetrator wasn't just trying to scare them, he was actively taunting them.
And even crammed into the main house together, the family still wasn't safe. The very next night, right around 4 a.m., the mother heard footsteps slowly creeping up onto the porch. She just lay there totally terrified, listening as someone began violently rattling the weak lock on the basement door, actively trying to get into the room where the young men of the family were sleeping. By the time she gathered the courage to rush down there, whoever it was had completely vanished again. The family packed up and abandoned their vacation days early. Their peace was just completely shattered.
Lingering paranoia. Let's talk about the aftermath. So what's the crucial takeaway from today's explainer? Well, it really lies in these unifying threats. Whether we're talking about a physical trespasser in a backyard, a random proxy repeating a toxic ex's words, or an unflinching man in the dead of night at a remote vacation rental, the core terror is exactly the same. It's that profound violation of our private sanctuaries. But even more than that, it's the chilling use of those expressionless blank stares. You see, the true horror isn't just in the physical threat of violence. It's the complete lack of emotion. It's the total absence of humanity in the eyes of the people watching you. And that results in a permanent, lasting loss of peace and trust. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. We walk past dozens, maybe even hundreds of strangers every single day, right? And we just assume they're background characters in our lives, nothing more. But after seeing how easily those boundaries can be erased, and how a totally blank stare can hide the darkest intentions, can you ever truly trust a stranger's face again?
Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. And hey, I hope you remember to double check those locks tonight.